My family didn't betray me loudly. They destroyed me quietly.
Have you ever been betrayed by the very people you were taught to trust without question? People who shared your childhood memories, your home, your blood? I have, and I learned the hard way that betrayal from family doesn't just hurt, it reshapes you. It forces you to redraw every line you thought was permanent. I grew up believing our family was unbreakable. We weren't wealthy, but we were close. Or so I thought. My parents ran a small business that barely kept us afloat, but there was always food on the table and laughter in the house. I had a younger brother. He was the golden child, charming, carefree, always the one everyone protected. And me? I was the responsible one, the fixer, the quiet backbone holding everything together. It was a role I didn't choose, but one I accepted without question. Then my father fell ill, and everything changed. The foundation of our lives cracked. Medical bills piled up faster than we could count them. The business, already struggling, started to sink. I did what I thought I had to do. I took on extra work, my days bleeding into sleepless nights. I skipped meals, delayed my own dreams, putting every part of myself on hold, all to keep the family standing. I never complained. I believed that sacrifice was simply the price of love, what family does for one another. What I didn't know was that while I was giving everything, someone else was taking it. The signs were small at first. I was organizing financial paperwork one evening, trying to find a way to stretch our budget just a little further, when I noticed inconsistencies, missing funds, withdrawals I couldn't explain. 1,000 here, a few hundred there. At first, I blamed stress, thinking I'd made a mistake. Then I blamed the economy, grasping for any logical reason. The truth was far worse and far closer to home. It was my brother. He had been siphoning money from the business for months. Not for survival, not for emergencies. No, this was for gambling, for parties, for a lifestyle built on fleeting pleasures and friends who vanished the moment the money ran out. He was living a life I couldn't even dream of, funded by the sacrifices I was making every single day. The confrontation was quiet, devastating. I laid out the papers, my hands shaking. He didn't deny it, he didn't even try. He just shrugged. That same carefree charm now looking like pure arrogance. He said he'd pay it back, that I was overreacting. As if his betrayal was just a minor inconvenience. But the real shock came when I told my parents. I expected them to be horrified, to demand justice, to stand with me. My mother cried, yes, but my father defended him. He's young, he said, his voice firm. He made a mistake. A mistake. I had given up years of my life to protect this family, and the moment I asked for accountability, I became the problem. I was the one disrupting the peace, the one who was overreacting. In that moment, the entire structure of our family shifted. I was no longer the backbone, I was the outcast. The real betrayal, the one that shattered me completely, came later. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was silent, insidious. The business finally collapsed under the weight of the debt. Creditors came knocking. Legal notices started arriving in the mail. And somehow, without my knowledge, my name had been signed onto loans I never approved. My brother had forged my signature to secure more money for his habits, and my parents? They had known, and they had said nothing. They watched him sign my future away and stayed silent, choosing to protect him over protecting me. I lost everything in a matter of weeks. My savings drained to cover the initial shortfalls. My credit ruined by loans I never took. My home sold to pay off debts that weren't mine. And my family, they stayed silent. They watched me pack my life into a single suitcase, their silence screaming louder than any words ever could. I moved out with nothing but that suitcase and a bitterness so deep I didn't recognize myself. For the first time in my life, I stopped answering their calls. I stopped being the rescuer. I let them face the consequences of their actions completely and utterly without me. That silence, I later learned, hurt them more than any argument ever could. The years that followed were hard. I had to rebuild myself from the ground up, piece by piece. I found a small apartment, a steady job that paid just enough. I started therapy, which forced me to confront the painful truth. Loving people doesn't mean allowing them to destroy you. That was the hardest lesson of all. I learned about boundaries, Not as walls to keep people out, but as fences to protect my own peace. I learned self-respect, something I had given away freely for far too long. And then karma arrived. Not with a loud bang or a dramatic crash, but quietly, precisely. My brother's destructive habits finally caught up with him. The debts followed him everywhere he went. The fair-weather friends disappeared. When my parents could no longer shield him from the consequences, he finally had to stand alone. The family business was long gone. The house they loved was sold. And in their desperation, suddenly they remembered me. The call came on a Tuesday. They asked to meet. For the first time in years, we sat across from each other at a quiet cafe. My parents looked older, smaller, worn down by the very storm they had helped create. My brother couldn't meet my eyes. He stared into his coffee cup as if it held the answers he was looking for. "I know we hurt you," my mother said, her voice trembling. "We didn't protect you the way we should have." My brother apologized too, but his voice was thin, laced not with guilt, but with fear. He needed something. He needed a lifeline. He needed the fixer to come back. I listened calmly, carefully. I let the silence hang in the air after they finished speaking. I saw their expectant faces, waiting for me to fall back into my old role, to offer a solution, to sacrifice myself once more on the altar of family. And then I said no, it wasn't out of revenge, it wasn't out of anger. It was out of a newfound sense of self-preservation. I had already paid the price for their mistakes once, and I refused to pay it again. "I forgive you," I told them, and I meant it. Holding on to that anger was only poisoning myself. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean sacrifice. That was the moment they finally understood what they had lost. Not just financial support, not just a quick fix. They had lost the person who once held their world together, the person who would have done anything for them. They had lost a daughter and a sister. I walked out of that cafe feeling lighter than I had in years. The weight of their expectations, a burden I had carried my entire life, was finally gone. Family betrayal doesn't always end with shouting matches or dramatic revenge plots. Sometimes it ends with quiet strength, with choosing yourself after years of choosing everyone else. I didn't lose my family that day in the cafe. I had lost them years before. What I did that day was finally, truly, find myself. And that was a victory worth everything.